Now, the third type of story that we talk about in a mythology course are folk tales or fables. Now, these type of stories take place in once upon a time, pretend time, okay? If you're really a literature person, okay, you want to distinguish between folk tales and fables. I don't think all of us need to be all that worked up over it. But technically, scholars who study folk tales and fables divide them into the two groups. Folk tales are where ordinary people, just schmucks like you and me, are the main characters. There may be animals in the story, but the main character is a human being. Fables technically refer to stories where the main character is an animal, usually an animal who can talk. There may be people involved in the story, but the main characters are animals. We're not going to get too worked up over it in this course, but if you're really interested in stuff, then you want to keep that straight. And the purpose of folk tales and fables is to serve an educational purpose, to build character. You've heard the phrase, the moral of the story is, in other words, a moral lesson, a lesson to be drawn from the story. A good example of a folk tale is Little Red Riding Hood. We just talked about Robin Hood, now we're talking about Little Red Riding Hood. Everybody, I think, probably knows the story of Little Red Riding Hood, okay? Little Red Riding Hood is walking through the woods. The wolf sees her. He figures out that she's going to her grandmother's house, so he runs ahead to her grandmother's house and kills and eats her grandmother. Whoa, we weren't told that part of the story, were we? He like ties up her grandmother or something, because we had a nice sanitized version of the story. And so Little Red Riding Hood shows up, and the wolf is in Grandma's bed, and well, you know the Little Red Riding Hood story. Okay, so what's the moral of the Little Red Riding Hood story? Why did your parents tell you the Little Red Riding Hood story? Why have we told the Little Red Riding Hood story for hundreds, if not, yes, if not thousands, and I mean that, if not thousands of years, have we told children this story? I'm going to give you a second. Think about what the moral of the story is. What's the point of the Little Red Riding Hood story? Why would we tell this to children? Yeah, all of you have drawn a lesson, and maybe I'll mention something that one of you came up with. If I don't, then send me an email. I'd like to hear what the lesson is, okay? What kind of moral to the story is, to the Little Red Riding Hood story, okay? Don't talk to strangers. That's a good one. Um, don't go in the woods. That's a good one. That's a very good one. If you read the Grimm's fairy tales, I mean the real stories, where does all the bad stuff happen? In the woods. If you live near the woods like I do, and you've got a little kid, 3 or 4 years old, you know, be very careful in the woods. All kinds of bad things happen to little kids in the woods. All kinds of really scary things happen in the woods, okay? And so if you live near woods, then you would tell your children stories to get them to be afraid to go out walking through the woods, all right? Because bad stuff happens when you go out in the woods. Now, see, if you tell a kid, don't go in the woods, where's the kid going to go? In the woods. But if you say, here's an interesting story about a little girl who went into the woods, yeah, see, they'll remember that. And you should know, and I want to be very delicate here, in the original Grimm's fairy tales, the wolf sexually assaults Little Red Riding Hood. Like I said, we got the sanitized version, okay? But this is very much a story about staying near the house. Don't go in the woods. Don't talk to strangers. That's the point, the very serious point. So we see these kind of folk tales and think back to some of the ones that you were told as children and try to figure out, why did mom and dad tell me that story? Okay. It's an entertaining story, but there's also a lesson. Don't talk to strangers. Stay around the house. Don't go out in the woods. It's a very serious story.